Welcome to the Private Practice Alchemy video podcast series, where I help you work smarter and earn more in your ideal therapy practice. I'm your alchemist and host, Jennifer Kennett. My guest today is Geraldine Carter of She Thinks Big Coaching. She's a business coach for CPAs. They hire her to help them grow their accounting practices and get their time back. Today, we're talking about money mindset. There we go. All right. Well, I am very excited to have Geraldine Carter on my web show. And Geraldine Carter is a business coach for CPAs. CPAs hire her to help them grow their accounting practices and get their time back. And Geraldine is also my business coach. I saw her at the Success Summit for Business Among Moms last year, was it?
Yeah.
Feels like 10 lifetimes ago,
I
given
know.
COVID-19. But you know, the presentation you gave on key performance indicators was one of those mind-blowing days for me, where I was just like, oh, I finally get it. And I knew I wanted to work with you, and it's been fantastic. But the thing that actually really jumped out at me when I've been listening to your podcast, because Geraldine also has a podcast, was around money management and sort of that money mindset. And so I am really excited about having you come and speak on money mindset and getting right with your money relationship with money. But I wanted to start because I'm sure that people are going to be going, well, it makes sense. This is her business coach, so of course she'd interview her. But you're a business coach for CPAs. Mm-hmm. So what made you say yes to coming on a web show for therapists running private practices?
Well, first of all, you're my client, so I'm happy to have this conversation. But really, the answer is that anybody in business has a money mindset that is likely to be getting in their way, whether they're a CPA or an accountant or a therapist or a graphic designer or a chef. Mm-hmm. We all grow up with our own stories around money and how much money we're capable of making or we're never capable of making, or who are the people who do make money, we're not those people, or who are the people who don't make money, we're not those people, or I am one of those people. We all have these stories around money mm-hmm. that tend to lay hidden in our lives until we become our own business owners. And when you own your own business, there's no hiding behind anybody. You can't hide behind any of your employees. You can't hide behind, there's just no hiding. All of the decisions that you make in your business bear out in your profit and loss, and all of your weaknesses manifest in your numbers. So it becomes incredibly important. It becomes incredibly important, and you can no longer avoid handling your relationship to money if you want to get your time back and make more money, because it's woven into the decisions that you make, likely unbeknownst to you until you start to address it.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting because I see it the money mindset showing up in relationships as well, of course, sure. In the couples coaching or couples counseling I do. And so it permeates our lives in so many ways. Yes. And I love that's, you sort of looked at it and went, this is going to be the same challenges, different business, same challenge. Yeah. And so it's totally worth getting that message out.
Yes.
So what do you see as kind of the top 3 sort of money mindset challenges that service-based entrepreneurs have related to money?
Yeah. So I would say the first one is often just setting pricing on services at a really basic introductory level. The question is always, am I charging too much? How much is too much? And I would say the question is, are you charging enough?
Right.
Because what happens is, especially when we're starting out and we don't have full confidence in what we're doing and the quality of what we're doing, what we tend to do is under target the value that it's worth to other people. Mm-hmm. And we think that we can gain more clients by lowering our price, and that will help people come in the door. And that does work at the outset as a strategy to help you bring in some new business. And what happens though is that you end up over time filling your client roster with people who are people who are not paying you enough relative to what it costs you to run your business. And we tend to forget or not know all the costs of running a business. And for somebody in private practice who's renting an office, you could be looking at, in Seattle, $3,000 to $5,000 a month, all told, for all your business expenses. And we tend to not factor that in to what we price. And we also think about pricing the deliverable, which is the session, rather than the value of the outcome of the sessions.
I think that's a really important point, and one that you and I have been talking about, is the idea that we trade time for dollars, and that the time is the component rather than the outcome.
Yes.
The other thing I was thinking about it as you were talking is when we price our services lower, we are going to attract price conscious clients.
Yes.
You know, they're going to be determining who they're choosing based on the number, not based on the fit. And so we kind of are shooting ourselves in the foot, because we're saying we want the clients who are going to be really money conscious, which may actually not be our ideal client. They might be, but it's not the most important thing to be thinking about when it comes to a good fit, particularly in the therapeutic world.
Yes. Yes. And what you end up with is, so what I hear people saying when it comes to pricing is that they have a certain floor, but they don't recognize that they have a floor, right? And they say, well, I have to help people. If they come to me, I have to help them. And let's just use round numbers for easiness. So $100 a session. Would you say yes to $100 a session? They say yes. And I say, would you say yes to 75? And they say yes. And I say, would you say yes to 50? And they say no. Would you say yes to $10 a session? No. Would you say yes to $1 a session? No. So everybody has a floor. It's just arbitrary. And where they set the floor tends to be just slightly beneath what they can actually what actually makes it work. And what they do is end up compensating or filling the gaps. If you imagine brick and mortar, they end up filling the cracks by stretching themselves, and they give away their self-care, they give away their personal time, they give away time with their loved ones, they give away vacation time, give away, right? They give away, they compensate themselves, and they stretch themselves to the max in order to, but make that floor, wherever they've arbitrarily set it, viable, right? Rather than simply bumping up the floor by 25%. Right. And then getting their time back, and then finding the clients who are happy to pay whatever that new session rate is, if we're still in the dollars per session kind of model. Right. So I ask clients, I go through that exercise with clients to find out where their arbitrary floor is, because everybody's got one, they just don't see it. Right. And then once we do that, we can say, okay, what's it going to take for you to lift the floor up? And then there's this piece that you're alluding to about when your clients come to you and they're shopping on price. I mean, to a degree, everybody's going to shop on price. They're just at a different scale. Yeah. And I was talking to somebody who does marketing just yesterday or the day before, and he said, people's networks look like each other. And what happens is your clients are going to multiply like bunnies in a warehouse. So you're going to attract, if you start out at a certain floor, right, and you bring those clients in, they're going to start referring you with referrals at the same level. And it's going to be it's going to be much more difficult for you to lift your business once you have 100 clients at that floor than it is to simply peg yourself higher out of the gates. Right. What about the ceiling, the mental ceiling? Is there also that for people? So there absolutely is a ceiling about what people think that they can earn. And we can do this very same exercise in the opposite direction, which is stop me when you think it's just way too much money, right? And we do 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, 200, 250, 500, 750, a million, 2 million. Oh, stop. Now I'm getting uncomfortable. I could never get there. Right. And we find out where their arbitrary ceiling is and what it means to them, because the ceiling is just a number. But it's their relationship to the ceiling. At $2 million, I would just be dripping money, and that's gross. right? And
Right.
they don't want to be the person who they've decided is a person at $2 million who drips money, whatever that means, because I don't know what that looks like, literally, not figuratively, right? But we make these things up.
Yeah.
And then we go, I don't want to be that. So let me just play it safe here at $125 a session so that I'm not that person
Right.
who is gross.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Right. We've decided that that person is gross because we knew one person out of thousands who
Right.
does that. And we do everything to not be that.
Yeah.
Including cap our own wages.
And I've seen an interesting sort of disparity in that ceiling, where if you talk about a per session rate, it's a much narrower band.
Yeah.
Than an annual salary rate,
yes.
or an annual revenue rate. That people don't do the math translation. So, oh God, I couldn't charge $250 an hour. But when you actually put that into an annual salary, they're like, oh, I could earn that. And like, there's a cognitive dissonance there, because if you can't charge that, you can't make that. So what's going on there?
Yeah. You walk me through the math.
Exactly. And people don't do the math. It's entirely an emotional response to what feels okay. And I think that's where just exploring that money mindset is so crucial, because until we recognize it, we can't respond to it. We can't explore it and hopefully dismantle it.
Yes.
Okay. So you've talked a little bit about the entrepreneurs getting stuck in the money time trap, because you talked about people are choosing to, I love the phrase you used, I'm now forgetting it, that they're giving of themselves to stretch, to fill that gap.
Yeah.
What other money time traps do you see entrepreneurs falling into?
Yeah. So there's definitely the dollars per hour or the dollars per session. There's also really focused, there's this piece about charging what you're worth, that it gets termed as. And so this might not be money time per se, but the focus so often tends to be on the exchange of time. And then we can take the focus off of the exchange per time or the exchange per session, and we can put it on, well, you should just charge what you're worth. And that's an equally problematic question, because what is the worth of a person?
Yeah.
And then you can, so not only is that not quantifiable, but you can get into a worse trap of trying to put a dollar figure on your value. And if your value is connected to your self-esteem and your self-esteem is low, then you see where that spiral goes.
Absolutely. It becomes a conditional thing. If I don't make X amount, I'm not really valuable.
Right.
I'm not worthy.
Or I'm not worthy. I'm not making enough. I'm not worth it.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get yourself just caught. And you can get yourself caught in all kinds of ways when you make your pricing about you. And I would say, take the focus off of the time, take it off of the session, and take it off of you, and put it on the value to the client. What is it worth to them to have a happy, loving, supportive, joyful marriage?
Right.
What's it worth to them to stop having fights in front of the children? What's it worth to them to get out of this cold shoulder? I'm going to give you the cold shoulder treatment for 2 weeks because you didn't make the bed for 3 days in a row. What's it worth to the client for them to have their life, the dynamics in their life, completely shift so they start living a different quality of life? What's that worth to them? In order to find that out, you need to ask them.
Right.
Which creates a very different onboarding process, if you will. It creates a very different conversation in the sort of sales, if you will. And I understand that in private practice, that's not really a thing, talking about sales as such.
Yeah.
But whether you speed through the sales conversation or not, you're still having one. So,
and that's another money mindset question.
That's another money mindset question, right? So I think that there's room to expand in the initial conversations before you even engage in work about what it is that you're trying to accomplish
Right.
and really clarifying and distilling that, and not just diving into work
Right.
just to, get started working, clarifying what you're trying to accomplish, what outcomes you're looking for, and what that is worth to that person. And then you have an entirely different conversation about price.
And I think that's an interesting piece, because as therapists, most therapists, even in private practice, are good at asking, what does the client want as an outcome? But we have done a terrible job about tying that to value. Because there's such a stigma to the idea that we are actually having a sales conversation in that moment. And I think that's probably a place where the ick factor for therapists shows up the biggest. It's, I'm doing good work, I shouldn't be making money at the same time, or I shouldn't be talking about or emphasizing that I'm making money at this, because that diminishes my worth, my value. And it's a fascinating piece, and certainly one that as a therapist myself, I've had to unpack. And I can see that there's still lots of unpacking to do on that one.
So it sounds like there's one in here that is around, and this is really common in the helping professions, around being noble. And that money is kind of beneath me, and I'm really just here to help and serve.
Yeah.
And I was actually listening to a set of CDs yesterday, and the coach was talking about, this is from 2004, and I was like, this is still topical.
Yep.
And she was talking about how, being of spirit, we can have sort of spirituality drama and divorce ourselves from the reality of needing to balance our checkbooks at the end of the day. And it's easy to get into this in the helping professions of, I'm being helpful, I'm of service, and the money will just follow.
Yeah.
Now, I trust in the universe, and I trust in the divine. And you can't meditate your way to $1 million.
No.
So you've got to do the work you have to do the business work, you have to do the money mindset work, and you have to actually do your work.
Yeah.
What you're being paid for. And I would argue that it's actually false to be well compensated for doing good work in the world. Because if the opposite were true, then it's only the robber barons who should make good money. And I don't think that robber barons should be making good money. Yeah. Well, I think people who are doing great work in the world are the ones who should be the best compensated.
I agree. And I think that's actually probably the consequence of that particular money mindset challenge, is that because we've got this being of service is a noble and a profession, and it should not be compensated. We look at those robber barons and go, it sort of makes sense that they'd be making all the money because they're not actually doing good work. And you sort of, when you actually put that out loud, it's like, this is insane.
Yes.
This is truly insane.
It's totally insane.
It's also, you can tie it into some social justice things around the value of taking care of children being so low. I remember being horrified when I realized how much my childcare provider was making on a per hour basis per session, or sorry, per kid. I just it was like $2 per hour. And I'm like, oh my God. My husband and I actually gave her a Christmas bonus because we just felt like she was an amazing childcare provider. And she was shocked. She'd been doing it for 20 years. She said we were the first family who'd ever done that for her. And I think that was actually one of the first points where I started looking at dismantling that particular belief in me, with this idea that something that is good work that makes a difference in the world being paid so poorly is just accepted. And I went, I'm gonna challenge that in this small way, and that opened the door to really looking at that in my world, my work, and in my own life. So, so important. And I wanted to connect that to resentment, because I see that showing up in, if you set your value at a certain number, and you're giving of yourself to bridge that gap. That's also, it's like the gap in the pavement that allows the weeds to grow.
Yeah.
So what do you see around resentment and money mindset?
Sure. So anytime one is the energy of resentment is a blocking energy, right? Because you're holding on to resentment in the same way that a dam holds back water, right? So you're holding your own ill will towards some other person or towards some other thing, or perhaps towards yourself for the way that you've behaved in the past. And anytime you're holding back your own energy, right? And you're preventing it from flowing more freely. So it can play out in any number of ways. By way of example, if say you're resenting the profession itself, which is an easy target because there's no exact person and it just seems so justifiable. So you're resenting the profession for having set up the way the pricing works and the insurance and the billing and, all the ancillary hoops that you need to jump through, what have you, and you're resenting the profession. All that energy is holding you back from actually dealing with the things that you in reality need to deal with, despite the fact if you may deem yourself above them and you simply want to do noble work. Right. So that energy gets in the way of you moving your business forward. Let's say you're resenting money. And there are all kinds of ways that you can resent money, right? You can resent money because it made you look bad. You can resent money because it put you in the spot of embarrassing you when you didn't have enough, or maybe your credit card was declined, or you can resent it for all the ways you felt like crap when your checkbook bounced or you bounced a check. There's all kinds of ways we can be holding resentment against money. And when we do money, I hate you, you make me look bad. And then we do money, come here, I want more of you. But I don't want more of you because you make me look bad.
You can see the problem there, right?
Yeah, we get caught, right, with this mixed signal that we're sending to money about what it should do.
Yeah.
So of course it doesn't come to you because it's like, I'm not coming near you because one minute you love me and the next minute you're giving me the cold shoulder. So I'm going to steer clear for a while.
Right.
So there are all these sort of sneaky ways that our resentment of money and, money itself, or resenting other people because they have more money, or resenting other people because they have less money and they should get it together, or however we want to play it is all just, they're all just thoughts. It's all just monkey mind.
Yeah.
And it's simply just blocking the flow of energy and the flow of doing good work that we need to put out there in the world so that money can come to us, flow through us, and flow out. And one of the things that I've come to see working for accountants, having them as my clients and them having business owners as their clients, is from a high level, because I kind of look down the system, that money very much flows through the system.
Yes.
And anytime one person stops the flow of money through them, then they stop it going to the next person, which stops it going to the next person and the next person and the next person. And so for all the people who are holding money tightly, they're preventing it from flowing throughout the system. So we need to be open to it coming and open to it going.
Right.
And letting go of the tightness we have around it.
Yeah. I actually read an interesting article yesterday about that we are, because of COVID, we're entering coins are not flowing. And so there's a shortage on actual coinage.
Yeah. Interesting. I believe it.
I was like, oh my goodness, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I also, this is one of my favorite stories about the psychology of money. So when I was in my senior year of high school, I actually did I guess it was an Adventures in Citizenship conference. So I flew from Vancouver, BC to Ottawa, which is the Canadian capital. And one of the places we went was to the Bank of Canada. And they showed this very hokey little video on the circulation of money, sort of from the printing process, sending it out into the world, it being, transactions. And then they talked at the very end about bringing money back into the Bank of Canada, decommissioning it, and then they shred and burn it. And I'm sitting there, I'm sort of like, okay, my mom was doing a degree in economics at the time, so I thought, this is fascinating, she'll find it interesting. And this kid next to me starts moaning when they decommission the money and they starting to shred and burn it. And he's like, oh my God, this is so hard to watch. And I sort of looked at him and I'm like, what is he talking about? And I realized in that moment, he could not divorce the idea of that piece of paper from his concept of money being valuable.
Yeah.
And it was like this mind-blowing experience for me of how powerful the story of money is for people in that moment.
Yeah. And if you burn it, there will be no more.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, he actually, I remember him saying, can't they just give it to me? And
I'll take care of it.
Exactly. Like, how could you do this to this precious thing? And I'm like, it's paper. The decommissioning part just didn't register for him.
Yeah.
And we put such power into those coins and into those pieces of paper. Mm-hmm. They mean something psychologically to us.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think when I started from there, it was the idea of money mindset and money story. And it was all like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah. We're told that tiny little rectangle of paper has a lot of value. And then we go, okay, I'll believe that.
Right. And different ones have different value. That's the, like
right,
a $1
physically
means,
it's
like, ooh, I want to have Benjamins because they're 100 and not one. And they're the same paper.
Well, which makes me go back to, why is a session $1 or $20 if it's just a session?
Right.
What is the value of a session?
Yeah.
If you could put a 1 on it and people will go, okay, yeah, 1. If you could put a 20 on it and people go, oh yeah, 20. Yep, that makes sense.
Right.
Why not do the same with a session?
That's a really great point. So I want to end with just a couple of tips or ideas that people can start with to really dig into their own money mindset. What do you do with clients to start getting them thinking about this?
Yeah. So one of my favorite exercises to do with them is a simple mind map, which many folks have probably heard of in different ways. You can put, so just in the interest of keeping it contained, for example, you can put inside a black circle with a Sharpie in the middle, you write money, and you just start writing all the different associations that you have with it. And then you can take, for example, rich people, or you can just write the word rich and do a money mind, and you can do the same for poor. And then you can say, for example, the amount of money that I am worth is, and you just start writing. Or if I'm rich, what it'll mean about me is, and you just start writing. And these are simply ways for us to start to begin to understand our relationship to money and the relationship we have to what it means to either have a lot of money or not have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the fear of not having money is just as important to deal with.
Yes.
As the fear and or the possibility of having a lot.
Right.
Because we tend to believe that being not having a lot is somehow dangerous, and that we are safe when we have a lot. And there's no safety in having a lot of money. It may give you peace of mind, but it may not give you safety. And I think the danger is that we look to money to give us things that it cannot actually give us on the inside. So I like the contrast with the idea of not having money just so that people divorce themselves from the belief of money giving them the things that it cannot actually.
I think it's a really good point, is that if we only do the thinking about the wealth side,
yes,
and we forget to do the piece around the poverty side, there's a missing piece that to create a different relationship with money, we need to look at both the negative and the positive on both sides.
Yes, because otherwise you're just running away from fear.
Yes. Into the arms of something that isn't going to save you.
Yes.
Geraldine, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I am so excited to hear what the viewers are going to say about this particular topic. I think you've opened up some avenues for my viewers to really think, how can I change my relationship with money? Whether they are business owners or just interested in the question of money, money mindset, money narrative. Your words have been very inspirational. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real treat to have this conversation with you.
Thanks for joining me today. If you're ready to work smarter and earn more money in your ideal therapy practice, book a 30-minute free coaching call with me. Visit my website at privatepracticealchemy.com and click on the big purple Schedule Time with Me button. And if you're in your first year of private practice, sign up for the next cohort of my 90-day Private Practice Alchemy Accelerator Group. Groups start in January, May, and September. You can register for the next cohort on my website. Thanks for listening.